On July 1st, the anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China, a serious incident occurred in Luoyang due to a sewer blockage. Instead of rainwater, sewage erupted from a manhole cover. The streets near the scenic area were filled with a strong odor, and the ground was covered with a large amount of waste. Video showed that the sewage sprouted up to about 4 or 5 meters high, which was shocking even from a distance. A staff member at a restaurant on Jiayu Gate Street reported that when they arrived for work on the morning of July 2nd, they found a large amount of sewage still around the manhole. The entire street was impassable. The restaurant had to close early on the evening of July 1st, and there were still very few customers the following morning. The staff member also mentioned that many people had fallen at the intersection, getting soaked from the waste. A large number of videos circulating online show cars and electric vehicles struggling to move through the slippery sewage. Several motorcycles slid, and the drivers got covered in mud. The wheels of passing cars were also covered in waste. Some individuals online commented, "This is quite fitting. Whether in terms of image, atmosphere, or essence, this is the perfect birthday gift for the CCP." Additionally, heavy rainfall led to the collapse of Zhongzhou Road in Luoyang, creating a large sinkhole in the middle of the street. In the comments section, netizens mocked the authorities for corruption and mismanagement. The subway's poor construction collapsed again. People in Henan know the Zhongzhou Wanda area collapsed a few years ago, and it's the same place. This is a long-term plan. Surely there are national treasures underneath. Maybe they can build another subway exit while they're at it. Recently, much of China has been flooded. Flooding and waterlogging have affected areas such as Henan, Sichuan, Yunnan, Guangdong, Hunan, Jiangxi, and Gansu. A total of 1.6 million people have been affected to varying degrees, with 42 confirmed are missing. At around 5 a.m. on July 2nd, the water level of the Beiru River in Luoyang, Henan Province, rose sharply, causing some sections of the riverbed to collapse. Local residents reported that the water level was close to overflowing onto the bridge, but began to recede around 7 a.m. A government worker from Huangzhuang Township stated that a warning line had been set up at the site of the collapse, and no residents were affected. Netizens commented sarcastically, "The poorly built bridge collapsed, houses were swept away, yet somehow residents were unaffected. Government workers must have grown up with the CCP birthday gift." At the heavily affected disaster site in Xisha County, Henan, the owner of a guest house was seen carrying a generator down the mountain for repairs. He stated that after many years of operating a guest house, this was the first time he had encountered such severe flooding. The mountain had been without water and electricity for 2 days, and villagers were forced to get their water from the dirty, murky river. Currently, transportation has been cut off, and the only way to descend the mountain is on foot, through the rugged stone paths. Villagers are hoping for the roads to be cleared soon, but no government workers have been seen on site. Reports from Xisha County, Henan Province, indicate that extreme rainfall has caused 8 people to go missing. Search and rescue efforts are currently underway. According to reports from Chinese media, tourists trapped at the Baiyun Mountain scenic area in Henan have successfully descended from the mountain. The site showed that a mudslide had destroyed roads, and vehicles were trapped by mud and debris. Tourists were seen in their pajamas attempting to dig out vehicles from the mud. Some netizens complained that cars parked at the hotel parking lot were flooded, and that hotel staff were irresponsible, hiding and providing no explanation. One netizen remarked, "It's better to be poor. I don't need to travel. Right now, I'm busy worrying about my child's tuition next semester and have no money for leisure." Another netizen pointed out there was a mudslide in the same place in 2021, and here we are again in 2025 with the same mudslide in the same location. What does that tell you? Reports from Luoyang County, Henan, indicate that flash floods caused by heavy rainfall have resulted in 5 fatalities and affected over 5,700 people. Several roads have been destroyed, and numerous homes have suffered significant damage. From the early hours of July 3rd to the morning, multiple areas in Yunnan City, Gansu Province, were hit by heavy rainfall, with some regions receiving up to 264 millimeters of rain. According to meteorological authorities, this torrential rain is a rare regional downpour not seen since 1961. It resulted in road closures, damaged homes, and paralyzed infrastructure. A large number of vehicles were swept away by the flood, and casualties are reported to be severe. At the same time, multiple highways, including National Route 316 and Provincial Route 206, were disrupted due to landslides, mudslides, and flooding. The total length of damaged roads reached 1,776 kilometers, with 2 bridges destroyed. An accumulation of 493,000 cubic meters of landslide debris and mud posed a serious threat to road safety. According to meteorological monitoring, from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. on July 3rd, the town of Yunnan in Gansu recorded an hourly rainfall of 73.3 millimeters, setting a new local record for rainfall intensity. Residents reported that when they woke up, the streets had turned into fast-flowing rivers. In some areas, the water level exceeded 1 meter, with vehicles submerged and many shops flooded. The heavy rainfall triggered multiple geological disasters, causing widespread road closures and severe flooding of farmland throughout the county. On July 3rd, a mountain flood in Kang County, Gansu, triggered severe flooding, submerging homes and vehicles. The streets in the urban area were severely flooded. Under the impact of the heavy rainfall, the water level in the Yangtze River section in Kang County rose rapidly, and a car traveling through the area was swept away by floodwaters. At Binghui Park in Yuhe Town, the rapidly rising river overflowed its banks, with water levels reaching up to 2 meters. In response to the rain, 189 households and 464 people from 16 towns were urgently relocated to safety. Netizens questioned, "Rain is a normal occurrence, but why does every rainstorm now lead to flooding? Is this related to urban development?" On the same day, a heavy downpour in Longnan City, Gansu, led to flash floods that swept away vehicles. Local authorities issued a blue mountain flood warning. A netizen asked, "Can someone from Gansu confirm if this is true?" Another responded, "It's absolutely true. We're currently experiencing it." A reporter has just received information from the city local relief headquarters, stating that a landslide injured one person and left another missing. The injured individual was sent to a hospital but was declared dead after unsuccessful efforts to save them. The missing person was also found after a search, but their rescue efforts were unsuccessful. Both individuals were workers at a local construction site. The assessment of the situation on site is still ongoing. Multiple sections of roads in Tianshui have experienced landslides and mudslides, creating dangerous conditions. Local media reported that heavy rainfall in Gansu continues to persist. One netizen commented, "After severe drought comes severe flooding. I'm in Tianshui, and last night's downpour was like the sky had opened up." At 6:18 a.m. on July 4th, the Gansu Lanzhou Central Meteorological Station issued a continued yellow rainstorm warning. It is forecast that most areas of the province will experience heavy rainfall over the next 12 hours. The heavy downpours are expected to last until 5 p.m. on July 4th, with the maximum hourly rainfall reaching between 20 and 50 millimeters. In Yunnan, local reports indicate that Yunnan is experiencing a once-in-a-century torrential rain and flood disaster. The flood peak is causing great destruction, with multiple areas submerged. Rescue operations are currently underway. Netizens uploaded videos claiming that in some areas of Yunnan, the rainfall exceeded 50 millimeters per hour. Large container trucks were swept away as if they were toys, and 6 to 7-story buildings were destroyed and collapsed by the force of the flood. This is the Gongtou Industrial and Trade Ice Sugar Factory in Yunnan, Lincang. The square in front of the factory has turned into a lake. Many local netizens commented that this year's weather has been unusually extreme. In a video, a netizen was seen clinging to a motorcycle that had been swept away by the flood. One netizen remarked, "It's really hard to understand. At this point, saving your life is the priority." Another commented, "They have no choice but to do this." Additionally, a netizen expressed frustration, saying, "Now some people are still organizing donations from the public. My salary is only a little over 1,000 yuan, and I can barely afford food. How am I supposed to donate?" On July 2nd, China Railway Kunming Bureau Group Company Limited reported that due to heavy rainfall, water damage had occurred on the Dali-Lincang Railway in Yunnan. The railway authorities have activated an emergency response and are working to repair the damage. To ensure the safety of train operations, adjustments will be made to passenger routes passing through the Dali-Lincang section, which may cause delays for subsequent originating trains. Recent widespread heavy rainfall and flooding in China have resulted in numerous fatalities and injuries. On July 2nd, local netizens uploaded a video reporting that Hubei Xianfeng had been experiencing heavy rains. A couple, while notifying local businesses to salvage goods on the street, reportedly died due to electrocution. According to netizens, the man's Douyin account contains his last video. The victim's sister-in-law left a comment in the video section stating, "My brother-in-law was informing others to move vehicles and advising merchants to secure valuables. My sister was worried about him, and they both tragically lost their lives at the store entrance." Local netizens shared that Mr. Shen and his wife were always kind-hearted people, sincere and passionate. They were still informing everyone to remove their vehicles at 2 or 3 in the morning. When I saw the news, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. I couldn't believe this was real. On July 2nd, the local government confirmed that a couple had indeed died during the heavy rainfall. Jianfeng County's power supply company stated that they had not received any reports of deaths due to electrocution. The Jianfeng County Publicity Department said that the cause of the couple's death is still under investigation. CCTV News reported that according to forecasts, China officially entered the main flood season starting July 1st. During this period, northern regions are expected to experience heavier floods, with significant flooding potential in areas along the middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, Hai River Basin, and Songliao River Basin. Additionally, 2 to 3 typhoons are expected to make landfall, and a strong typhoon is expected to move north. This year, extreme weather events have been frequent, including strong winds, sandstorms, heavy snow, heavy rainfall, hail, and droughts. Many netizens expressed their frustration, saying, "Dying from droughts or floods. We thought last year's rainy season was long, but this year's is even longer." In areas like Dandong, Liaoning, the number of rainy days has doubled compared to previous years. Under the subtropical high-pressure system, even air conditioning can't keep up with the heat. High temperatures combined with typhoons and heavy rain this year is just too difficult. Some netizens pointed out the government's inaction during these disasters. They criticized the Chinese Communist Party's recent release of a flood discharge compensation policy, calling it inhumane. On June 27th, the state-run Xinhua News Agency published an article on the flood retention area compensation measures, openly stating that in order to ensure the safety of key areas threatened by floods, the use of flood retention areas would be required, meaning floodwaters would be diverted to certain low-lying regions. Flood disasters are unfolding across China, and the Chinese Communist Party's recent actions effectively announce that reservoirs may be discharged at any time, creating man-made catastrophes. The so-called compensation measures are a form of deception, offering compensation for some property losses while completely neglecting compensation for human casualties. The latest measures take effect immediately. Article 1 of the measures states that in order to ensure the safety of key areas threatened by floods, reasonable compensation will be provided for losses suffered by residents within the flood retention areas. This means that after the discharge of floodwaters from reservoirs, residents who are flooded will not receive full compensation for their losses, but only a so-called reasonable compensation. The Chinese Communist Party creates man-made disasters, but refuses to fully compensate for the losses of the people. Article 4 of the measures states that before utilizing the flood retention areas, relevant departments and units should organize the relocation and protection of personnel and property within the areas, to minimize the losses caused by the flood retention. For years, officials at all levels of the CCP have frequently ordered unannounced flood discharges, creating man-made floods far greater than natural ones. The public isn't given warning, and they have no time to prepare or evacuate. The newly released measures will only state that authorities should organize evacuations during flood discharges, but that they're not required to. There is no stipulated time limit for prior notification. This essentially allows local officials to discharge floodwaters at any time without bearing any responsibility. The newly released measures suggest that in order to prepare for the 2025 flood season, the Chinese Communist Party continues to tacitly approve and even encourage local officials to order unannounced flood discharges from reservoirs. Article 11 of the measure outlines the scope of compensation for losses caused by the flood discharge, which includes 1. Losses to crops, specialized farming, and economic forestry due to water damage, 2. Losses to housing from water damage, and 3. Losses to farm equipment, major household durable goods, and livestock that could not be relocated due to water damage. These 3 points address property losses and make no mention of compensation for the loss of life. In other words, the Chinese Communist Party can discharge floodwaters at will, knowing that it may lead to fatalities, but deliberately avoids discussing compensation for lives lost. Officials who order the flood discharges are also not held accountable. Article 12 of the measures further outlines 3 areas where compensation will not be provided, effectively preparing for the Chinese Communist Party to avoid responsibility. The third item is losses to agricultural production machinery, major household durable goods, and livestock lost due to water damage that could have been relocated according to evacuation orders but were not. This third item is particularly egregious. The phrase, could have been relocated according to evacuation orders but were not, is extremely vague. The key issue is that it does not define the time limits for issuing the evacuation orders or the specific procedures for carrying out the relocations. Actual cases show that when Chinese Communist Party officials order discharge of floodwaters, they sometimes try to evade responsibility by simply posting a brief notice on social media, with no real effort made to organize evacuations in advance. In some cases, the notice was issued after the flood discharge had already occurred, leaving residents with no time to evacuate. Many elderly residents in rural areas do not use social media and are unlikely to follow official public accounts, making them particularly vulnerable. Moreover, the first two items in the non-compensation section of the measures primarily concern residents who illegally live, farm, or build homes in flood discharge areas. While this may seem unproblematic at first glance, it's actually a significant issue. In Western countries, flood retention areas are strictly prohibited from being used for habitation. However, in China, the public is generally unaware of which areas may be designated as flood discharge zones. The newly released measures do not clearly specify that these areas cannot be inhabited, farmed, or developed, and the corresponding management is vague. As a result, every time the CCP orders a flood discharge, it immediately becomes a life-or-death issue for those affected. With the release of the new measures, the original measures, which were issued in 2000, have not been updated in the past 25 years. Article 4 of the original measures stipulated that safety construction and management in flood retention areas should be strengthened, industrial structure adjusted, population growth controlled, and the relocation of people should be organized in a planned manner. The measures from 25 years ago at least provided some planning for flood discharge areas, including the mention of organizing population relocation. Ultimately, flood discharge areas should be uninhabited, but the relocation of residents would require the Chinese government to properly arrange new housing. However, local officials reluctant to take on the responsibility without central government funding rarely took action. In practice, CCP officials have essentially left residents in flood discharge areas to fend for themselves. The revised and latest measures, Article 4, now only states that during flood discharge, authorities should organize evacuations and minimize the losses caused by flood retention, removing the previous provisions regarding controlling population growth and organizing population relocation. The upper levels of the CCP understand that relocating residents from flood discharge areas is too difficult, and, unwilling to take responsibility or allocate funds, they have completely shifted the burden to local officials. Over the past 25 years, the CCP has built various large and small reservoirs, but the surrounding residents are often unaware if the area they live in will be subject to flood discharge, or if they continue to reside there. It can be said that the CCP shows no concern for the safety of people's lives and property, with officials engaging in deception and now openly shifting responsibility. The original measures from 25 years ago included a list of flood discharge areas, but the newly released measures do not include a similar list. Most people are likely aware of the flood discharge areas listed 15 or 25 years ago, nor can they know which areas may be designated for flood discharge at any time, as the CCP has chosen not to disclose this information. With the flood season upon us, Beijing likely foresees another year of severe floods. In order to ensure the so-called safety of key areas, the CCP will continue to order flood discharges from reservoirs and legitimize the practice, allowing this life-threatening behavior to repeat itself. However, this year, the number and intensity of anti-government protests across the country have been far greater than in the past. Perhaps the continuous economic decline has reached a tipping point, and the repeated exposure of the government's atrocities has awakened more people. For those who have lost hope in life, resistance seems to be the only remaining option.